with Potomac Beads. Join me in learning some netting and brick stitch as we make a really cool dream catcher. You can use this as a pendant, or you can actually hang it from a window to catch a little light. And there's tons and tons of different ways to take the tips and tricks that you learn in this project to use in your other designs. If you need any materials, check out the links below to shop with us online. The first thing to do to get started is to get your ring. I'm using a 40mm endless ring, and I'm using it in the silver color. I have to begin some Delicas and then my collection of 15Os, as well as some 4mm crystals. You can use anything for this project, which is pretty amazing. What I'm going to show you how to do first is we're going to do around the outer edge, the whole outer edge, we are going to do some brick stitch. So you're going to take some thread. I have 0.006 wildfire beading thread in the white color to kind of hide in my ring. And you want about 5 feet of beading thread. Feels like a lot of thread, but you're going to use it as you do the brick stitch the whole way around. The first thing I want you to do is tie the end of your thread onto your ring. And I just leave myself a little bit of a thread end, like an inch or so, that I can grab onto when I go back to tie my final knot. I'm going to tie that once and twice so that it sticks on the form. From here, I'm going to begin my brick stitch. What I am going to do as I'm doing my brick stitch, though, is add a 15O seed bead right after my bead that I'm adding. Now, when it comes to the first section of brick stitch, you want to add 2 beads at once. So we're adding our 2 Delicas, and the reason I have the 15O there, I'll show you in a second. We're never sewing back through the 15O. I have my 2 Delicas on, and I let them drop down next to my frame. I'm going to sew under my frame, and then I'm going to sew back up through bead number 2 of my Delicas towards that 15O seed bead. What that's going to do is my 15O just works to kind of top the beads there and sit at the top so you don't see any thread. Again, 15O always goes on first, and then your Delica. After you have those 2 on, let them drop down next to your ring. Sew through the ring, bringing your needle through the bottom, and then sew back through the Delica and not the 15O. So just through the Delica there. Once you come up through your Delica here, it will sit so that the hole is facing right to the top. You're going to continue this same brick stitch the whole way around the project. Adding your 2 beads, 15 and Delica, sewing through the ring, bringing the needle in front of the ring, and back up through that Delica. That's going to get you the start of that brick stitch, which we're going to do the whole way around the frame. The whole way around the frame, you'll end up with about 74 or 75 of these seed beads hanging out with the 15Os sitting on top. So the whole way around the ring, and then once we get back that the Delicas are almost touching, I'll show you how we're going to go from our last one, our 74th Delica, and we're going to sew in down to our first Delica. When you've gotten your beads the whole way around the form, you can see that you want your brick stitch threads there to sit pretty evenly around the form. You'll have that 15O seed bead going the whole way around the outer edge. Now the 15O, I should have mentioned, the Delica I used was going to be the Duracoat, the opaque mauve luster in the 11O265, and then my 15O that I used was the Duracoat galvanized dark mauve. And I liked the darker color to just kind of make those color pops. When I got to the end of the row, coming out through my 74th bead, on my needle I added 1 more 15O, and then I sewed down bead number 1. So simple. What that does is that closes up that ring, so that way when you're looking at it, you don't really have a section where a bead kind of sits on an angle. It's going to sit right up. I'm going to move that stop thread out of the way, and now what we're going to do is go from end to end along the form to create my first little section that we are going to do on our actual interior section of kind of the webbing. So I've already started with one section to kind of show you the effect that we're going to get. And what you want to do after coming out of bead number 1 there is add 1 Delica, 6 15s, Delica, 6 15s, and then a Delica. And I'm going to show you after doing that how you're going to attach to your next section. We're going to count over 12 beads and attach. So this is the same thing if you're just starting. Ignore that first one there. I should also mention that I'm using 15 O's in the Matte Duracoat Galvanized Champagne. And then my 11O there in my Delica is that mauve color again. So I have my beads on here in my string, Delica, 6/15s, Delica, 6/15s, Delica. I'm going to count over approximately 12 beads from where my thread is coming out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Right after that 12th bead, I want you to sew between the bead underneath and that ring. So I'm not going through the Delica, I'm going basically to the other side of the ring. Once you're there, you're going to tuck underneath the ring and come back down through the Delica towards the middle of the project. So you're brick stitching basically the Delica into place. As you do this and continue along the sides here, what we're going to do is we're going to continue on with that same pattern to get our whole outer edge. So once again, you'll repeat with your 6 15-O's, and then once those 6 15-O's are on there, 1 Delica, 6 more of your 15s, and you could be using 11-O's if you want as well, and then 1 more Delica. When you get that last Delica on, you're going to again count over approximately 12 beads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I'm going to sew down right there between the ring and the Delica bead. See how that ends up there? Once you're there, go through the ring and back down through that last Delica. Give it a little tight pull so you don't have a lot of extra thread showing, and on to the next one. So you're going to get almost this cobweb or netting effect to start on the Dream Catcher's outer edge. With the division of 12, you should end up with 7 sections of your little netting area here. Now I'm done 6, I'm on my 7th one, and I have my 6 15-O seed beads, my 1 Delica, and 6 more 15-Os. Going back over here to my first Delica that I put on, I'm going to go up through the Delica towards the ring, and then I want to go through the ring and back down through the Delica. So basically you're doing the exact same thing, but that Delica is already there and in place. That's going to get our first exterior little netting area as we're looking at our Dream Catcher. From here, I'm going to go backwards, and I'm going to go through the 6 15-O seed beads and out through the Delica. We're going to do another row of netting, and this time I'll change up the color, and we're going to connect to all of the Delica beads that sit in between the 15. So we're going to span our section here from one of our Delica beads, adding some 15-O seed beads and a Delica in the middle to the next Delica in line. As you start on your second row, you see I've already done a couple. You're going to switch from 6 of your 15-Os to 5. I have 5 15-Os, 1 Delica, 5 15-Os, and then you sew through the next Delica from the previous row. Add 5 1 5, sew through that next middle Delica. 5 1 5, sew through the next Delica. I have my 5 1 5 on, and then I'm going to pick up that next middle Delica and pull that in nice and tight, and then on to the next one. So this one is going to have a little bit of a sag to it. That's intentional because we want to start pulling in towards the center of the design. So I'm going to continue. I have 3 more to do, and then we'll pick up for our third row what our pattern and our order is going to be. When you finish up your row, you're going to go back into that Delica that your thread was originally coming out of, and then again with the netting you step up to the center bead. So I'm stepping up through the first 5 15s and then through that Delica bead. That's going to complete then my second row, and we're going to go on to the next row. The next row, just like we've done, is going to pull in towards that Delica, or towards the Delica we're going to attach from end to end. So I've jumped ahead because you probably have the gist by now that as you're doing this setup, you can see I've done now for my third row of my netting, 3 of my white beads, and those are the matte opaque dark cream AB, 1 Delica, 3 white beads. I'm on my last one here, and I'm going to go through again that same first Delica bead, pull that in towards the center, and then step up, going through my 3 Delica, or my 3 15s, and coming out my 1 Delica bead. Once I'm out that Delica bead then, it's time to set up for my next row. So my next little row of my netting, you can see I've pulled this in a fair amount. We still want to, when you're having your needle and thread through like that, you can see about how much you want to pull it in towards the center. So I'm going to switch back to my dark mauve, or actually I'm going to go with my Duracoat Galvanized Champagne in the matte. And once again, I'm going to do a 3-1-3 pattern. So 3-1-3 pattern, go over to the next Delica from your cream color, and sew through just the Delica bead. So it's the same thing over and over. You can also play around with and experiment with the counts, so you don't need to do the exact same counts as me. You can play around with it. This one here, you'll notice, because it's the same amount, is going to sit almost on top of the last row. I'm then going to pull it in towards the center as we go in and do our 5th row. So go ahead, 3 15s, 1 Delica, 3 15s, and on to the next middle Delica from that cream row. So as I continue along, you can see that I did my 3-1-3 with that matte Duracoat Champagne. And then my next one I did 1-1-1. So 1-15, 1 Delica, 1-15. And now as I'm going in to connect to that Delica, I'm just using one of my nice cream colored. So I'm going into just the center bead. So remember, you're just going into that center bead. And I'm going to add my 1-15. And that's going to pull that in towards the center a lot and get that center almost full. Now we want to fill the center because we don't want the dreams to escape. But right now I'm going to go around and just add one of my cream colored beads, jump over to my next center Delica like we've been doing. So it's nothing new, it's just the amount of beads that you add at once, and pull that in towards the center. To finish up the center of my dream catcher, I'm going to be catching on now to the white bead. So we don't have a middle bead, and I've gone ahead and sewn back through the first cream 15, and I have my 3 beads here, which are 3mm bicones. Now I have an odd count in the middle, but what I'm going to do, there's 7 if you haven't been paying attention. There's 7 little of your strings. I'm going to add one of my 3mm bead, skip over one of the cream beads, and sew into the 3rd one in line. Give a nice tight pull. Go ahead, add one more. Skip over one and go to the 5th one in line. And then what I want to do is skip over 2, so add my 3rd one, and I'm going to skip over 2 to go back into that first white bead that my thread was coming out of. And that's going to pull just that triangle in to the center of my dream catcher. So it almost looks like a little nest. Now what I'm going to do is go back through the first bead there, and I'm going to sew on an angle through the bead. So I'm sewing through the 15 in the white, then up through the Delica and the 15 next. And basically what I want to do is bring my thread end up towards the starter thread in order to, you can use a jump ring, you can use a little bail on. What I'm going to do actually is, because it's pretty short at this point, I'm going to go in here, wiggle back through, and right near some of my cream beads, I'm going to go ahead and tie a knot, because that white thread will disappear really, really nicely near the cream colored beads. So I make a loop, I take my thread through that loop, make sure that it's not between the beads that I don't want it to be, Get it down right where I want it to go. And before pulling really tightly, I'm going to take that thread through one more time. Give a nice tight pull. Once you have it in position, which mine is after my 15s there, and nice tight pull. You can take your thread burner or your threads up then and burn off the extra thread. From here, I would just simply put it on a jump ring, hang it from a necklace, and you can see kind of what it's going to look like as you go in. The fun thing with dream catchers, you can do these in so many different varieties. But the nice thing with this one is you learned brick stitch along the way and then went into this netting stitch. The netting stitch can also be done in a tubular fashion. It can be done like this. You can do it as a bezel to hold something in as well. So it's two really great skills that have been learned. I wanted to show these off also as a pair of earrings. Although they're a little large, they look really cool as earrings. I have to make myself a matching one so I don't look like a fool with one bead embroidery earring and one here of my dream catchers. But you can see how cool they look when they're on the ear. All I did was open up an ear wire, shove it onto the ring, and close it up, and there you go. Remember, if you need any materials or any help with this dream catcher, go ahead and click on the links below to shop with us online. Also, comment below and let us know exactly the size beads that you're going to use, if you change up the size of the ring, what the counts are of the beads that you change. That helps the beading community at large, so you may pre-answer some people's questions and help them out. Good karma comes back around. As always, you can give a little thumbs up, and then if you want to, click that subscribe if you haven't already yet so you don't miss anything from us here at Potomac Beads. As always, thanks so much for watching, and have fun creating multitudes of your dream catcher earring, pendant, little dangle, window cling. You can do all kinds of things.